Hello YouTube. In the Vatican, there is an illustration from the Aztec code depicting a group of Indians dragging the body of a giant with the entrails falling out. At first glance, this may seem like an ordinary hunting scene, but in fact it is evidence of the Aztec conquest of the ancient civilization of builders of megalithic structures. Interestingly, these structures were constructed without the use of a wheel and had dimensions not suitable for ordinary people. When the European conquerors of Mexico arrived, they reportedly found huge skeletons there. Official science claims that these are the remains of dinosaurs. That's according to Russian researchers. But in the annals, there are mentions of giant skulls with red or blonde hair. This raises interest and questions about past civilizations and the possibility of existence of giants in antiquity. As for that interesting code, it's called Codex Vaticanus. The Codex Vaticanus A-Rios is an important witness to the Spaniards' knowledge in the early colonial period of ancient indigenous Mesoamerican traditions. It is an ethnographic compendium treating Aztec divination rituals, culture, and religious ceremonies. It provides valuable insight into the European interpretation of Aztec religious and cultural life. The manuscript was conceived as a picture book with copious explanatory texts. 146 of its 202 pages include painted elements. Notable images include the serpent deity Quetzalcoatl and a pyramid, a sacrificial scene with figures drawn with light-colored hair and women's costumes. So it's really a great source. The celestial layers and underworld levels of the Aztec cosmos occupy the opening facing pages, important for being the only known image of the Aztec celestial layers. The manuscript was created between 1570 and 1589, although there are other dates, and I'll get into them, either in the highlands of Mexico or it may have already existed in Italy, similar to the case of the Paris Codex Telleriano-Remensis, a copy of a joint original draft which Robert H. Barlow named the Codex Hutzli-Potzli. While the Codex Telleriano-Remensis clearly is written by several writers, the Codex Vaticanus 3738 contains only one style, however divided into cosmological, mythological, and ethnographical sections. For example, in Codex Vaticanus A, it was written after 1566 by the Dominican friar Pedro de los Rios, who was a member of the order capable of studying the original cultures of Mexico as well. The buildings of the Dominican order still bear witness to this type of study in many parts of Mexico. The work of Pedro de los Rios, which is presented in an Italian translation, for example, thus became an important aid in understanding this culture, which is otherwise difficult to access. So if you want to study further, I am sure there may be discoveries in this codex about ancient Aztecs, maybe overlooked by other researchers. You can do it yourself when the time comes, I'm sure, if you're interested. But at least you have this tool. But let's now travel to ancient Rome to see about the giants as well. An ancient Roman estate, including a landscape pleasure garden, developed by the historian Sallust in the 1st century BC. It occupied a large area in the northeastern sector of Rome in what would become Region 6 between the Pincian and Quirinal hills near the Via Salaria and later Porta Salaria. The modern neighborhood is now known as Salustiano. The giants of the ancient world, the famous Salustia gardens in Rome, were guarded by giants Posio and Scundilla. They were widely known throughout the city due to their huge height, reaching 3 meters. In addition, the giants had a formidable character which scared off petty thieves and hooligans from the luxurious Salustia estate. Another giant, whose height almost reached 3.5 meters, was one of the hostages sent to Rome by the Persian king. According to writings of Josephus, the ancient Jewish historian, the giant did not possess any supernatural power, but was known for his veracity, and at the ether competitions he was ahead of his rivals every time. And then we move eastward. Once upon a time, people of unusually tall stature could be found on the territory of the Northern Urals and Siberia. Moreover, these were not isolated cases of physical anomalies, gigantism, which sometimes occur in our time too, as there are reports of the entire tribes of the giants in those ancient Russian lands. One of the documentary evidence belongs to Ahmed ibn Fadlan, who in the years 921-922, together with the embassy of the Caliph of Baghdad, visited the king of the Volga Bulgars, having previously traveled through the lands in what is Russia today. I have attached the link to my video about this Arab diplomat and writer and the paranormal phenomena he had observed in his travel. It took me months, some years ago, to locate the Russian language translation of his book, and there are reasons for that. Anyway, the book written by Ibn Fadlan is an invaluable source of history of pre-Christian Russia, including the Urals. Of course, at that time, it wasn't the Russian land, it was later conquered, but still, it's very interesting. But the passage from it that interests us is usually not talked too much about, let's put it this way. It tells nothing less than about a giant who lived in the vicinity of the Volga Bulgar capital. The Arab traveler and diplomat told how, while still in Baghdad, he had heard from a captive Turk that at the headquarters of the ruler of the Volga Bulgar kingdom, one giant was kept in captivity, a man of extremely huge physique. When the embassy arrived on the Volga, Ibn Fadlan asked the king to show the giant to him. Unfortunately, the giant was killed not so long ago before the Arabs' visit because of his violent and malicious nature. As eyewitnesses told from one look of the gigantic creature, children fainted and pregnant women had miscarriages. The feral giant was caught far to the north, in the land of the Visu. According to modern historians, this is previously described in chronicles, the Ves people that lived somewhere in the Pechora region. And the giant was brought to the capital of Volga Bulgars. He was being held outside the city, chained to a huge tree, and that's where they strangled him. Ibn Fadlan was shown the remains, and I saw that his head was like a large tub, and his ribs were like the largest dry fruit branches of palm trees, and in the same way the bones of his shins and both of his elbow bones. I was amazed at this and left. This is what he wrote down. Well, another confirmation can be found in the book, A Gift to Minds and a Selection of Curiosities. It belongs to the pen, so to say, of another Arab traveler, scientist and theologian Abu Hamid al-Garnati. More than 100 years after Ibn Fadlan, he also visited the capital of Volga Bulgars and met the same giant there, I assume from the same tribe, but only alive, and even talked to him. and Al-Garnati saw in Bulgar in 530 a tall man from the descendants of Adites, whose height is more than 7 cubits, named Dan Ki. He took the horse under his arm like a man takes a little lamb, and his strength was such that he broke the horse's shin with his hand and tore meat and veins, as others tear greens. And the ruler of Bulgar made him a chainmail which he carried in a cart, and helmet for his head, like a cauldron. When there was a battle, he fought with a club made of oak, which he held in his hand like a stick. But if he hit an elephant with it, he would kill it. And he was kind, modest when he met Al-Garnati. He greeted the traveler and did so respectfully, although the Arab traveler's head did not reach his waist. Siberian legends about encounters with giants were collected and recorded by the world-famous scientist, archaeologist Alexei Pavlovich Okladnikov, who lived between 1908 and 1981. Nikolai Kurilov, a hunter and reindeer herder from the lower reaches of the Lena River, told him that a certain man who hunted Arctic foxes in winter found huge human footprints on the shores of the Arctic Ocean and the footprints came out of the sea. The hunter decided to find where the tracks lead overland. After 2 days of driving, he saw a mountain in front of him, towering among the taiga like an island. There were especially many tracks there. Suddenly, a woman several fathoms tall appeared. She took Nikolai Kurilov by hand and led him into the house where the giant man was. He said to the hunter, "It's my own fault that I showed my tracks. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come here. Go back home, but don't tell anyone about this, and I'll help you get back. Don't come out until I get the sled ready. You can come out later." After a while, the giant returned to the house and commanded, "Now come out." There was a solid fog all around, and you couldn't see anything. The giant put the hunter on a sled, blindfolded him, and said, "When you get to your land, let the dogs go." The return journey took the hunter only 1 day and without an overnight stay. When the hunter opened his eyes, he saw that he was being carried not by dogs, but by 2 wolves. His own dog sled, loaded to the top, raced behind him. When he came home, the hunter released the wolves, and they immediately disappeared. When he opened the cargo, he saw a mountain of expensive furs. The fact is that the giant asked the uninvited guest, "Why are you wandering alone on the seashore?" He replied that he lived by it. That's why the giant gave so much fur out of pity. Until his old age, Nikolai Kurilov did not say anything to anyone, but only told Okladnikov just before he died. Actually, great well-known travelers also managed to see the giants. For example, the Spaniard Fernando Magellan is a famous navigator. He wintered in Argentina in 1520. In his expedition in Mother Patagonia, he met a giant whose height exceeded 2 meters, and Magellan himself was waist-high to him. Later, 2 more natives were caught by Magellan's men, whom they intended to deliver as a gift to King Charles I, but the Aborigines died on the way across the ocean, unable to withstand the difficult transition, and were thrown overboard. According to some sources, Patagonia takes its name from the word Patagon, which Magellan called the giants he met. Another English navigator, Francis Drake, in 1578, making a trip around the world, met people on the shores of Patagonia more than 2.8 meters tall, as he wrote in his logbook. Now, I have seen photos of the now defunct French news agency from 1915 of mummies of giant humanoids from Patagonia. This was very impressive. And we could go on and on. about giants of antiquity, and I have other videos you can find. Just look in the playlists on my video and you will find stories about the giants from Eurasia. One of the most interesting I remember, and I put it in my books, is about the discovery of a cave in Georgia before the Russian Revolution and the skeletons of those giants. And just remember, even in my research of Lake Baikal and the strange underwater humanoids, the size of them is almost always 3 meters. And the Arctic, if you look at the Arctic, I remember some information I gathered about the 1930s sighting of similar beings, humanoid beings of 3 meters tall. So I'll continue my research, and I look forward to your attention to my work. And if you can support my research, you can find the links on how to do it in the description to this video. Please like my videos. Please tell others about my channel and subscribe. Thank you.